Hello, my name is Joe Wills. I'm 33 years old, and if you look at my life now, a tidy apartment in downtown Salt Lake City, a CEO position at the green tech company I poured my heart into building, you might think I have everything under control. But the truth is, my life feels like a book with its first few pages torn out, leaving gaps I can never fill. Those gaps began in the past, from the days when I was a 10-year-old boy, watching my grandfather being dragged away in a chaos I could never comprehend. I grew up in a family that, to outsiders, shone with an aura of grandeur. The Wills name in Salt Lake City was synonymous with power, wealth, and skyscrapers bearing the Wills Group logo. My father, Gerald Wills, was the head of that empire. He was a tall man with a voice like thunder and a piercing gaze that could make anyone shudder. But for me, the person who made me feel safe, who made me feel loved, wasn't my father. It was my grandfather, Howard Wills. My grandfather was an extraordinary man in the most beautiful way. Tall, thin, with neatly combed silver hair, his eyes sparkled as if he could see a world invisible to others. He used to tell me about his grand dreams, factories powered by solar energy, endless fields of wind turbines. "Joe," he'd say, gripping my hand tightly, "we're not just building a company, we're building the future." I cherished those moments when he'd take me through the Wills Group offices, pointing at technical models and explaining them as if I were an adult, not just a kid who loved playing basketball. But then everything fell apart on what I still call the stolen day. I was 10, sitting in the large boardroom of Wills Group where my grandfather would let me join shareholder meetings to learn. I didn't understand much, but I loved the feeling of sitting next to him, listening to him talk about his grand plans. That day, the atmosphere in the room was heavier than usual. The shareholders were whispering among themselves, and my father stood in the corner, arms crossed, his expression icy. My grandfather, as always, was presenting a new plan, a bold, renewable energy project. But halfway through, my father stepped forward and cut him off. "Howard, that's enough," my father said, his voice sharp as a blade. "You're no longer fit to lead." I was stunned. My grandfather? Not fit? The man who played chess with me every night, who remembered every detail of the stories he told me, was being called unfit? I looked at my grandfather, expecting him to burst out laughing, to say it was just a joke. But he stood there, his face pale, his eyes wide, as if someone had just stabbed him in the back. What followed felt like a nightmare. Two men in white coats appeared, along with a stranger who introduced himself as a doctor. He read aloud from a document saying something about mental disorder and lack of capacity. I didn't understand those words, but I understood the way my grandfather was dragged out of the room, his hands trembling, his voice breaking as he called out to my father, "Gerald, why? Why are you doing this?" I screamed, trying to run after him, but my father held my shoulders tightly. "That's enough, Joe," he said, his voice hard as steel. "Your grandfather is sick. You can't see him anymore." That night, I lay in bed, clutching the teddy bear my grandfather had given me, tears soaking my pillow. I didn't understand. My grandfather was the smartest, strongest person I'd ever known. How could he be sick? How could my father let them take him away like that? And why did my mother, who was always so gentle with me, just sit silently in the corner, her eyes red but saying nothing? In the days that followed, no one mentioned my grandfather. My father took over Wills Group, steering the company toward projects my grandfather had once called a betrayal of the future. Resource extraction contracts, factories belching black smoke. My parents started arguing more. My mother, a university professor with a heart full of ideals, couldn't stand my father's way of doing business. And I knew one day she would leave too. I began asking my father about my grandfather, but every time I brought him up, he'd give me a look that made me tremble. "Your grandfather isn't well, Joe. Stop asking." Once I secretly called the mental institution where my father said my grandfather was being cared for. The person on the other end told me that patient Howard Wills is not allowed visitors. I hung up, feeling as though an invisible hand was squeezing my chest. The years that followed left a void in my heart. I could never forget the look in my grandfather's eyes that day, the look of a man betrayed. I promised myself that one day I would uncover the truth. But back then I was just a kid, powerless against the world. I had no way to stand up to my father, who seemed to have built a steel wall between me and every memory of my grandfather. Every time I tried to ask, he'd respond with a chilling stare or a curt snap. "Don't mention your grandfather anymore, Joe. You need to grow up and let it go." But I couldn't let it go. That void wasn't just pain. It was a reminder that something was deeply wrong, a secret buried beneath the surface. I entered my teenage years with a quiet resolve. If I couldn't uncover the truth now, I would prepare for the day I could. I threw myself into my studies not to please my father, but because I knew knowledge was the only thing that could make me stronger. I earned a scholarship to Harvard, a turning point I hoped would free me from the shadow of the Wills family. The day I left Salt Lake City, standing at the airport with my worn-out suitcase, my mother hugged me tightly. "Joe," she whispered, her eyes red, "you don't have to become your father. Be yourself." That was the last time I saw her for a long while. After divorcing my father, she moved to Boston, teaching at a small university, living a quiet but meaningful life. Harvard was where I truly found myself. There I wasn't Joe Wills, son of Gerald Wills. I was just Joe, a student with big dreams like my grandfather once had. I studied environmental engineering, immersing myself in lectures about renewable energy, green technology, and how they could change the world. Those ideas reminded me of my grandfather, the evenings he spent telling me about his vision for a future free of pollution. I wondered what he'd think if he saw me now, a 20-year-old sitting in the Harvard library scribbling notes about wind turbines and solar panels. When I graduated, I faced a crossroads. My father wanted me to return to Salt Lake City and work for Wills Group. He called, his voice dripping with false pride. "Joe, you're the heir. Wills Group is yours if you just come back." But I knew the Wills Group under my father was no longer the company my grandfather had built. It had become a money-making machine, heedless of the environmental cost. My father's factories spewed black smoke, and the oil and gas contracts he signed made me shudder. How could I join a place that went against everything I believed in? I refused. Instead, I joined Verdant Labs, a small startup in California focused on green technology. Verdant Labs was struggling but brimming with passion. I started as an engineer, working day and night to develop sustainable energy solutions. I loved the work, not just because it aligned with my ideals, but because it made me feel close to my grandfather. Every time I stood before a new turbine model, I could almost hear his voice. "Joe, we're building the future." Within a few years, I climbed to Chief Technology Officer, then CEO. Verdant Labs started making waves. We secured major contracts and caught the media's attention, but with success came increasing pressure from Wills Group. My father never forgave me for betraying the family. He began publicly criticizing me in interviews, calling me a naive boy who was tarnishing the Wills name. I tried not to care, but each of his words cut like a knife, reopening memories of the day my grandfather was taken away. Meanwhile, my younger brother Noah chose a different path. 4 years my junior, Noah was kind but easily influenced. After college, he joined Wills Group, working under my father. I didn't blame Noah. He didn't have the same vivid memories of our grandfather that I did, and my father always knew how to manipulate others with his charm and power. But every time I saw Noah, I noticed the conflict in his eyes. "Joe," he said during a rare coffee meetup, "working at Wills Group, it's not what you think. Dad does things I'm not sure are right." I grabbed his hand, trying to encourage him. "If you're not comfortable, leave, Noah. I'll help you." But Noah just shook his head, a sad smile on his face. "It's not that simple, Joe." My relationship with my father grew increasingly strained. Once at a tech conference in San Francisco, we faced each other head-on. I was presenting Verdant Labs' new project, a groundbreaking renewable energy storage system. The crowd applauded, but then my father stood up from the front row, his voice booming like thunder. My little Joe seems to think he can save the world with his pipe dreams. But business isn't a game, Joe. You're embarrassing the family." The room fell silent. I felt my face flush with anger, but I kept my composure and replied, "Dad, if saving the world is a pipe dream, I'd rather be a dreamer than destroy it." The crowd applauded again, but my father's glare felt like it could burn through me. I left the conference feeling like I'd won a small battle, but the real war was just beginning. On the flight back to Salt Lake City, I opened my laptop and checked emails from my team. A message from the Vice President of Business Development made my heart sink. "Joe, we've got a problem. Will's group is lobbying hard for the Nevada contract. They've met privately with key investors, and word is Gerald is using old connections to apply pressure." I gripped the armrest tightly, anger surging through me. The Nevada contract, a project to build a renewable energy system for a new city, was Verdant Lab's biggest opportunity yet. It wasn't just about billions of dollars, it was about establishing our position in the green tech industry. But my father, with his Will's Group empire, was targeting it like a predator. He didn't just want to win, he wanted to crush me, to prove that my pipe dreams were nothing but a joke. I called Leah as soon as the plane landed. "Babe, I think my dad's playing dirty," I said, my voice low as I stepped out of the airport. Leah, with her investigative reporter instincts, immediately asked, "Any evidence?" "I can dig." I told her about the email, about how Will's group was secretly meeting with government officials and investors in unofficial ways. Leah was silent for a moment, then said, "Joe, you need to be careful. Your dad isn't the type to stop at fair competition. I'll check if anyone in his network is leaking info." I nodded, even though she couldn't see, a warmth cutting through my anxiety. Leah was always my rock, with her sharp eyes and unyielding heart. In the days that followed, the Verdant Labs office became a fortress. I met with the team, assigning tasks to monitor every move from Will's group. We discovered they were funneling money into covert ad campaigns, smearing Verdant Labs as a young, inexperienced company. One morning, as I sipped black coffee in my glass-walled office overlooking the Wasatch Mountains, Noah called. My brother's voice sounded weary. "Joe, you were right. Dad's going all in on Nevada. He says it's a chance to teach his son a lesson." I gripped the phone. "Noah, can you help me? Just some internal info." Noah hesitated. "I'll try, but you know Dad. He watches everything." The call ended, leaving me with a gnawing worry. Noah was caught in the middle, and I didn't want to put him in danger. Amid the whirlwind, a surprise came from my father. One afternoon, my secretary brought in a thick envelope embossed with the Will's Group logo. Inside was an invitation, crisp white paper with gold lettering. "Joe Wills is cordially invited to Gerald Wills' 60th birthday celebration at the residence June 15th. I stared at the card, my heart racing. Dad's birthday? We hadn't celebrated together since I left for Harvard. Why now? When I told Leah, she raised an eyebrow. "Smells fishy. Maybe he wants to meet for family talk, but you should go. You might find a clue." I agreed, though my gut told me this wasn't an ordinary party. June 15th arrived faster than I expected. I drove to my father's residence, a sprawling mansion on the hill with lush gardens and a pool sparkling in the afternoon sun. I wore a simple suit, trying to stay calm, but my hands gripped the steering wheel tightly as I parked. The lot was packed with luxury cars, Mercedes, BMWs, even a Rolls-Royce. I stepped inside, the air thick with expensive cologne and fake laughter. Dad stood at the door, towering in a black tuxedo, smiling like a fox. "Joe, my boy, glad you came." He gave me a stiff hug, then led me into the grand living room. I scanned the room. This wasn't a typical family party. The guests were all my father's inner circle. Will's Group executives with phony smiles, his personal lawyer, a gaunt man named Marcus who'd helped Dad win big lawsuits, and surprisingly, a few doctors in formal suits. One of them made me freeze. Dr. Samuel Griggs, with salt and pepper hair and a smirking grin. The name sent a chill down my spine. He looked so familiar, but I couldn't place where I'd seen him. More importantly, why was he here? Why had my father invited doctors to a birthday party? I tried to stay composed, greeting everyone, but it felt like walking into a trap. Noah approached me with a glass of wine, whispering, "Joe, see? This isn't a birthday, it's a strategy session. They're talking Nevada." The party unfolded with superficial conversations. I sat next to a Wills Group executive who kept asking about Verdant Labs in a mocking tone. "Doing well, Joe? Heard you're competing with us for the contract. Hope you're not too stressed." I forced a smile, giving short answers, but the pressure built. Dad moved between groups, slapping shoulders, whispering things that made them laugh loudly. Leah texted me, "You okay? If anything's off, film it discreetly." I shook my head, trying to focus on the appetizer, shrimp salad with lemon dressing, but my stomach twisted. The incident happened when the formal dinner began. We sat around a long table, candlelight flickering on everyone's faces. Dad at the head, raising his glass. "Thank you all for coming. Today isn't just my birthday, it's a chance to talk about family and our legacy." He looked at me, his gaze sharp. "Joe, my son, chose his own path. But I hope he realizes Will's Group is the real future, not those green pipe dreams." I gripped my fork, swallowing my anger. But then Dad continued, his voice lowering. "You know, Joe, your grandfather was like that too, full of ideals, but in the end, he couldn't handle the pressure. He lost control. I just wanted to help him, and now I want to help you." Those words exploded in my head like a bomb. Help him? I jumped up, my voice trembling. "You call locking Grandpa in a mental institution help? He wasn't crazy, he was fine, and you know it." The room went dead silent. Everyone stared, some whispering. Dad smiled coldly. "Joe, you're losing it. Sit down, don't embarrass the family." But I didn't stop. Blood boiling, I pointed at him. "You stole his company. You used dirty tricks, and now you want to do the same to me? Dream on." My voice echoed, my hand shaking as I slammed the table, shattering a wine glass. I don't know why I lost control like that. Maybe it was the pent-up pressure, or perhaps something was slipped into my drink. I'm not sure. All I know is that day I acted completely out of character, hot-headed, unrestrained, and for a businessman like me, that was a fatal mistake. I panted, my face flushed, heart pounding wildly. Everything around me spun, distorted, hard to grasp. Noah grabbed my shoulder, pulling me out to the balcony. "Joe, calm down. What's wrong with you today? You're not usually this hot-tempered." I didn't know how to respond. I was utterly confused and disoriented myself. Then my phone buzzed. An anonymous text appeared. "Stay calm, Joe. You're being recorded. Don't fall into the trap." My heart skipped a beat, my mind clearing slightly. I wondered, who sent this? What was their motive? And how did they know I was being recorded? What the hell was going on in this godforsaken place? I didn't know the answers, but I was sure of one thing. I was in danger here. Without thinking further, I told Noah I had an emergency and had to leave immediately. I rushed to my car, driving straight home in a panic. The whole way, my mind swirled with dozens of questions but no answers. Leah was waiting at the door, hugging me tightly. "Tell me everything." I recounted it, my voice breaking. "Leah, I think Dad's repeating history. Someone texted that I was being recorded. I don't understand what happened there, and I'm worried about what's coming next. It's going to be a huge wave." Leah tried to comfort me, but I couldn't sleep that night. Images from the party haunted me. My inexplicable outburst, Dad's cold stare, Dr. Griggs' enigmatic smile, and that mysterious text. I could feel the shadow of the past returning, more ferocious than ever. But this time I couldn't be weak like the 10-year-old boy I once was. I had to stand and fight, not just for myself, but for my grandfather, whom I always revered. I had to uncover the truth behind the suspicious mental health accusations against him. The next morning, the sun rose through the apartment window, but my mind was still shrouded in darkness. I rolled out of bed, brewed a strong black coffee, trying to rally my spirits. Leah had left for work early, leaving a note on the kitchen table. "Stay strong. Love you. I smiled weakly, but the worry still gnawed at me. Then my phone buzzed. A call from Leah. Her voice was urgent. Joe, turn on the TV right now. The local news is reporting on you. My heart skipped a beat. I switched on the TV and my face appeared on the screen, accompanied by a glaring headline. Verdant Labs CEO Joe Wills showing signs of mental disorder? Viral video from family party shocks viewers. The anchor, a middle-aged woman with a grave tone, was analyzing. In a video that's spreading widely on social media, Mr. Joe Wills, son of billionaire Gerald Wills, lost his composure, shouting about his grandfather and accusing his own father. Psychologists are questioning whether this is a sign of nervous stress. Verdant Labs stock has dropped 5% overnight. I felt like I'd been punched in the chest. Newspapers, social media, everything was spreading like a virus. I quickly searched on Google and a slew of articles popped up. Joe Wills, from tech genius to psychological crisis, or Wills Group legacy, threatened by rebellious son. Leah called back right after, her voice full of concern. Joe, I just watched it. They're blowing everything out of proportion. I think this is your dad's ploy. He has connections in the media. I'll contact some colleagues to trace the video's source. I sighed, my voice faltering. Leah, I don't know what to do anymore. The company's being affected and I feel like I'm being hunted. She comforted me. We'll get through this. I'm on my way home. Let's talk in person, okay? I agreed, but as I hung up, fear surged through me. This wasn't just rumors, it was a systematic campaign, and I knew my father was behind it. I decided to head to the office early, hoping work would distract me. On the drive, the car radio mentioned me too. Breaking news. Verdant Labs shareholders demand leadership health check after controversial incident. I turned off the radio, gripping the steering wheel tightly. When I stepped into Verdant Labs' modern glass building, everyone looked at me strangely. A mix of worry and pity. My secretary, Sarah, approached immediately. Mr. Joe, there's an emergency board meeting. They want to see you. I nodded, trying to stay calm, but inside I was boiling. The meeting took place in the large conference room with shareholders joining via video call. The chairman, Mr. Hargrove, an elderly man with a slow drawl, opened. Joe, we appreciate your contributions to the company. But after that video, the public is buzzing. To protect Verdant Labs' image, we suggest you undergo a mental health evaluation. It's just a formality to reassure everyone. I felt my face flush. A formality? You think I'm crazy? This is a plot from competitors from Wills Group. But they shook their heads firm. We trust you, Joe, but you still need to get checked. Otherwise, the stock will keep dropping. I gritted my teeth and agreed, knowing refusal would only make things worse. Leah came home at noon carrying a bag of fast food and a determined expression. We sat at the kitchen table as she explained. I traced the video. It was posted from an anonymous account, but the IP leads to Salt Lake City near Wills Group headquarters. And I heard your dad called a few newspaper editors last night. I held my head. Leah, I have to go for the mental health check. The board's forcing me. She grasped my hand. Go, but record everything. Don't let them manipulate you. You're suspicious of that psychiatrist, Dr. Griggs, right? I nodded, and suddenly memories flooded back like a torrent. Dr. Griggs, that name. Yes, it was unmistakable. He was the man in the white coat that day when I was 10, the one who read aloud the document accusing my grandfather of being mentally ill. Leah, I whispered. He's the one who took my grandfather away. I remember now. He was the doctor who signed the papers confirming Grandpa was insane. How could I forget him? And so that afternoon we dug deeper. Leah used her network of reporters to find info on Griggs. He was a renowned psychiatrist, but with a shady history, accused of manipulating records in business lawsuits. Joe, he's been working for your dad for years, Leah said, pointing at her laptop screen. There's an old article mentioning Griggs as a longtime shareholder in Wills Group. I felt a chill. This wasn't coincidence. My father was repeating the old script, using mental health accusations to sideline me just like with Grandpa. The next morning, I drove to Dr. Griggs' clinic as required by the board. It was a cold glass building in the city center. My heart pounded as I entered, the air thick with the smell of disinfectant. The nurse led me to a private room and then the door opened. Dr. Griggs stepped in, his salt and pepper hair neatly combed, a polite but fake smile. "Mr. Joe Wills," he said, his voice feigned warmth. "Pleased to meet you. Shall we begin?" I stared at him, the memories from years ago vivid. He was the one, the doctor who signed for Grandpa, standing beside my father on that fateful day. The session started with basic questions. "How have you been feeling lately? Any stress?" But then Griggs shifted, his tone probing. "Do you think about the past often, Joe? About your grandfather, for example? He also had similar issues." I gripped the armrests, trying to stay calm. "What do you know about my grandfather?" He smiled. "I'm a doctor, Joe. I know quite a bit about your grandfather. He had delusions about sustainable business like you now. Maybe it's genetic?" Those words cut like a knife. I felt my blood boil. "You were the one who took my grandfather away. You followed my father's orders, didn't you?" Griggs shook his head, jotting notes. "See, Joe? You're losing composure. This could be a sign of paranoid disorder." The way he interrogated me was intensely uncomfortable. Twisted questions about dreams, my relationship with my father, about delusions of saving the world through green tech. He kept implying I was repeating Grandpa's mistakes, that business stress could lead to losing control. I tried to answer briefly, but my voice started trembling. "This is a scam. My father hired you to take me down." Griggs just smiled. "Joe, calm down. We're just checking." But I couldn't calm down. I stood up, pointing at him. "You know the truth. My grandfather wasn't crazy, and neither am I." He pressed the button for the nurse, and the session ended in chaos. I left the clinic with my head spinning, driving home in a rage. Leah was waiting, and when I told her everything, she hugged me tightly. "Joe, did you record it? This is evidence." I nodded, playing back the audio, Griggs' voice full of scheming. "Leah, I think my father framed Grandpa. He fabricated the mental illness story with that bastard Dr. Griggs helping. The goal was to steal Grandpa's company. And now he wants to do it to me." She nodded. "We need to find Grandpa. If he's still alive, he'll tell everything." For the first time, I truly suspected my father, not just business disagreements, but evil deeds, dark schemes. Grandpa was the victim, and I nearly became the next one. In the following days, public opinion still boiled. The press continued reporting. Joe Wills declines comment on mental health allegations, with photos of me leaving the clinic looking tense. Verdant Labs stock dropped further, and the board called another emergency meeting. But I was no longer afraid. I called Noah. "I need your help. Find info on the mental institution where Grandpa was committed." Noah hesitated. "Joe, Dad will kill me if he finds out. But I'll try." Leah dug into Griggs' records, finding old emails linked to Will's group. I started planning, not just to protect myself, but to turn the tables. I dreamed of Grandpa every night, his voice urging, "Find the truth, Joe." And I would. The past was no longer a ghost. It was my weapon. But I knew the battle had only just begun, and my father wouldn't stop easily. The days after the session with Dr. Griggs, I lived like a ghost in my own apartment. The Verdant Labs office became a refuge, but even there I could feel the probing stares from my colleagues. The stock continued to plummet, and the board of directors kept sending concerned emails. I spent hours at my computer replaying the recording of the session, listening to Griggs' scheming voice. "Paranoid disorder," he said, as if reading from a script. I clenched my fists, telling myself I had to act. I couldn't wait any longer. Leah was the first to bring a ray of hope. She worked tirelessly, scouring public records, her network of reporters, and even some anonymous sources she never revealed in detail. One evening, as I sat on the sofa staring at an untouched glass of whiskey, Leah burst in with her laptop in hand, her face a mix of excitement and anger. "Joe, I found it. she said, plopping down beside me. About Dr. Griggs. He's not as clean as he seems. I sat up straight, my heart racing. Leah opened her laptop and pointed to a series of scanned old documents, reports from the Utah State Medical Board. Griggs was investigated for ethical violations, she explained, her voice low as if afraid someone might overhear. He was accused of manipulating mental health records in a major business lawsuit. A company wanted to oust a partner, and Griggs signed off on a disorder certification without real evidence. They nearly revoked his license. I skimmed the documents, a chill running down my spine. But then Leah pointed to the crucial part. Look here. The investigation was abruptly shut down. Griggs was bailed out by a lawyer named Marcus Hale, the very same personal lawyer for your father, Gerald. They paid off witnesses to retract, and the case vanished from public records. I gasped, everything starting to click into place. So Dad saved Griggs from prison, and now he's repaying the favor by targeting me. Leah nodded, her eyes gleaming. Exactly. This is evidence, Joe. I'll write an investigative piece, but we need more. We need the truth about your grandfather. I decided to hire a private investigator, a man named Frank Harlan, a former cop introduced by Leah through friends. Frank was a middle-aged guy with a scarred face, a raspy voice from cigarettes, but eyes sharp as knives. We met at a suburban coffee shop where no one would recognize me. Mr. Joe, I need inside info, Frank said, jotting in his worn notebook. The name of the mental institution, any leads. I told him everything. About the day Grandpa was taken, about Griggs, about Dad. But I knew I needed help from the inside, and my brother, Noah, I needed him more than ever. I arranged to meet Noah in a park near Will's group at dusk to avoid prying eyes. Noah looked exhausted, his hair disheveled, dark circles under his eyes. Joe, I'm scared, he whispered as we sat on a stone bench. Dad's watching everything. But I found this. Noah handed me a crumpled piece of paper. The address of Silver Haven Mental Institution on the outskirts of Salt Lake City, noted from old company files. Dad hid it well, but I sneaked into his office. Grandpa's still there, Joe. They call it long-term care, but I think it's imprisonment. I clutched the paper, emotions surging. Noah, you're taking a huge risk, but I need you to keep going. If Dad suspects, just say I forced you. Noah nodded, a sad smile. We're brothers, Joe. I can't let Dad win forever. With the address from Noah and Frank's skills, we began the investigation. It took Frank 2 days to confirm. Silver Haven was a private facility, heavily secured, specializing in caring for high-profile patients. Your grandfather's still alive, Frank reported over a secure phone. They list him as chronic disorder, but an inside source says he's healthy, just isolated. I can arrange a secret meeting. My heart pounded. Do it, Frank, I'll pay double. Frank agreed and told me that there was a nurse in the facility who had been quietly helping my grandfather. And I was glad about that. The meeting happened on a pouring rainy night to cover our tracks. I drove to Silver Haven, parked in the nearby woods, and sneaked with Frank through the back door. The nurse, a middle-aged woman named Maria with compassionate eyes, led us through dimly lit hallways. Mr. Howard has been waiting for you for a long time, she whispered. He's not crazy, Joe, just locked away. We entered a small Spartan room with an iron bed and an old wooden table. And then Grandpa appeared. Howard Wills, 83 years old, tall and thin with silver white hair, but his eyes still sparkling like before. He wasn't the frail old man I'd imagined. He was healthy, just a bit gaunt, and when he saw me, he smiled, tears rolling down. Joe, my grandson, I knew you'd come eventually. I ran to hug him, tears streaming. Grandpa, I'm sorry, I didn't know, I thought you... He patted my shoulder, his voice steady. It's okay, Joe. I'm still alive and I've been waiting for this day. Now sit down, let's talk. We sat at the table, Maria standing guard, and Grandpa began to tell, his voice warm, filled with suppressed anger. Gerald, your father planned it for a long time. He and I disagreed on the direction of Will's group. I wanted to shift to green energy sustainability, but Gerald only cared about quick profits, oil extraction, environmental pollution. He staged a big argument at a shareholder meeting, hired Griggs to fabricate a mental disorder file. They planted evidence, sedatives in my drink, bribed employee testimonies. Then they locked me here, isolating me from the world so Gerald could steal the company. I listened, rage boiling inside. Why didn't you call for help? Sue? Grandpa shook his head, a sad smile. They controlled everything, Joe. Gerald's lawyers blocked every path. But I didn't sit idle. I secretly monitored things through a loyal executive, Mr. Edgar, still working at Will's group. He sneaks information to me through Maria here, the nurse who's helped me from day one. They bring newspapers, updates about you, about Verdant Labs. I'm so proud of you, Joe. You're doing what I once dreamed. I grasped his hand, moved, and the anonymous text, telling me to stay calm, that I was being recorded. Was that you? Grandpa nodded. From Edgar. He saw Gerald planning the same for you, using Griggs to take you down. I told Edgar to warn you. Everything fit perfectly. Dad hadn't just betrayed Grandpa. He was plotting to repeat it with me. Grandpa, we have to get you out of here, I whispered. He shook his head. Not yet. I'm waiting for the chance to strike back. Take this evidence back, coordinate with those you trust. We'll turn the tables, expose everything, but be careful, Joe. Gerald is dangerous. We hugged again, and I left with a heavy but hopeful heart. Frank drove me back in silence. Your grandfather's a fighter, he said as he parked. Back home, I told Leah everything. She listened, eyes wide. Joe, this is explosive. I'll combine it with Griggs' files for the article, but we need Noah to confirm from the inside. I called my brother right away, and Noah agreed to help, sneaking more documents from Dad's office. In the following days, we laid out a detailed plan. Leah investigated deeper. Frank tailed Griggs for more evidence, and I prepared mentally for the big confrontation. Every night I dreamed of Grandpa, but now he wasn't a ghost. He was an ally, whispering, "Avenge us, Joe." But the risks still loomed. Dad was tightening the noose in every way, and the Nevada contract deadline was approaching. I knew I had to act fast. With evidence from Grandpa, Griggs' files, and help from Noah, we were ready. The battle was no longer secret. It was the alliance between generations, between Grandpa and me, to topple the betrayer. The following weeks passed in extreme tension. Leah finished a preliminary investigative article, sending it to me to read. Griggs, the bought doctor, history of manipulation under Gerald Will's protection. She kept it secret, waiting for the right moment to publish. Noah sneaked files from Dad's computer, old emails between Gerald and Griggs discussing handling Howard. Finally, I returned to see Grandpa again, through Maria. He gave me a handwritten letter, a detailed plan to sue Gerald. You do it, Joe. I'll come forward when it's safe. I left the institution with revenge burning inside me. The past no longer haunted, it was power. But Dad, with his network, wouldn't surrender easily. I knew the climax was coming. The days that followed were a mix of tension and hope. My grandfather's letter lay in the locked drawer of my desk. He had outlined everything, from gathering evidence to contacting independent lawyers, avoiding any ties to Will's group. Don't let Gerald know what you're doing, he wrote in his shaky but resolute handwriting. He'll use every trick to stop you. I shared the letter with Leah, and she nodded, her eyes shining with determination. This is the key, Joe. But we need to strike hard from the public side first. My investigative article is ready. Leah had spent weeks perfecting the piece, a slow-burning bomb that she submitted to the most prestigious magazine in business and investigative journalism, the Sentinel Journal. It was a publication renowned for exposing corporate corruption, and Leah had good connections with the editor-in-chief from previous cases. The article was titled, "The Shadow of Power, Mental Manipulation in Business Families, the Wills Group Case." Leah wrote in detail, without mercy, From Dr. Griggs' history of ethical violations resolved by Gerald's lawyer to the pattern of using mental health manipulation as a tool to seize power. She described how wealthy families employed bought-off doctors to eliminate internal rivals, backed by evidence from old records and anonymous testimonies from Will's Group employees. Of course, the focus was on my grandfather's case. Howard Wills declared incapacitated without real medical evidence, leading to Gerald taking over the empire. The article was published on a Wednesday morning and it spread like wildfire. I was sitting in my Verdant Labs office sipping my third cup of coffee when Leah called, her voice excited but laced with worry. "Joe, it's out. Check online." I opened my laptop and the headline hit me on the Sentinel's homepage. Within the first hour, the article was shared thousands of times on social media. Major news outlets jumped in. CNN ran a short segment on the Wills family scandal. Fox Business interviewed experts on business ethics, and even Reddit exploded with threads dissecting the details. Public opinion began raising big questions. How could someone like Howard Wills, once an icon of innovation, be abruptly removed from the company? Was the decision from years ago truly fair? Had Gerald cheated to seize power? Wills Group shareholders started sending concerned emails and their stock dipped slightly, the first sign of the storm to come. I felt a surge of adrenaline, but also fear. How would Dad react? He wasn't the type to sit back and take it. Noah texted me right after. "Joe, Dad's furious. He's in an emergency meeting with the lawyers. The article's being read all over the office." I replied, "Stay calm. This is just the beginning." And as predicted, my father's counterattack came swiftly. Just 2 days after the article, Wills Group issued a statement. Gerald Wills was holding an emergency shareholder meeting at the headquarters in Salt Lake City. The official reason was to clarify baseless allegations and ensure the company's stability. Dad appeared on TV, his voice calm but cutting. "These are fabrications from those envious of Wills Group's success. I'll set everything straight at the meeting." I watched the interview, my heart pounding. This was the opportunity, the climax Grandpa had spoken of. I called Frank, my investigator. "Prepare to get Grandpa out. We'll make a surprise appearance." Frank agreed. "Got it. I'll arrange it." The days preparing for the meeting were the most stressful of my life. I contacted a new lawyer, Elena Ramirez, specializing in corporate fraud with no connections to Dad. Elena reviewed the evidence. The recording of my session with Griggs, Leah's article, the fabricated records from Grandpa's case, and a testimony from an old employee of Griggs that Frank had dug up. Someone who admitted to being coerced into providing false witness. "This is gold, Joe," Elena said, her eyes lighting up. "We can turn the tables." Noah helped from the inside, sending the meeting schedule and shareholder list. "Dad thinks you won't dare show up," he whispered over the phone. "He's preparing a speech to deny everything." I met Grandpa one last time before the meeting, at a suburban motel arranged by Frank. He had been secretly extracted from Silver Haven thanks to Maria and a few sympathetic staff. He looked healthier than ever, dressed in an old but neat suit, his silver hair combed back. "Joe, my grandson," he hugged me tightly, his voice trembling. "Today we end this cycle." We reviewed the plan. I'd appear first, present the evidence, then Grandpa would enter like a bombshell. Leah would be outside, ready to update the media. "Grandpa, I'm scared," I confessed. "If Dad wins..." He patted my shoulder. "No fear, Joe. Truth is the strongest weapon." The day of the meeting arrived with Salt Lake City's sky overcast, as if foretelling a storm. Wills Group headquarters, the towering glass building I'd once hated, was packed with luxury cars and reporters. Security was tight, but thanks to Noah, we slipped through the back door. I sat in the back row wearing a baseball cap to hide my face, my heart drumming. Dad stepped up to the podium, tall in his black suit, his voice booming through the mic. "Ladies and gentlemen shareholders, I'm here today to clarify. The recent allegations are baseless, aimed at tarnishing the Wills family name. Howard, my father, received the necessary medical care due to his declining health. As for Joe, my son, he's under stress. We'll support him." The room murmured. Dad continued projecting slides of denials. There was no manipulation. Dr. Griggs is an independent expert. That's when I stood up, removing my cap, my voice ringing clear. "Ladies and gentlemen, that's a lie from my father." The room fell silent. Dad stared at me, his face paling. "Joe, what are you doing here?" I walked to the podium, Elena beside me, taking the mic. "I'm here to present the truth." We projected the recording, Griggs' voice interrogating me, implying genetics from Grandpa. Then Leah's article, the fabricated records from years ago, the employee's testimony. I was coerced into signing false documents regarding Howard Will's mental health. Howard was not mentally ill, but his son threatened me, paid me off to silence me, and forced me into wrongdoing. I sincerely apologize. Shareholders buzzed. "What is this?" My father tried to interrupt. "This is fabrication. Security, remove him." But Elena raised her hand. "Wait, we have a witness." The door opened, and Grandpa walked in. Howard Wills, the man everyone thought had been incapacitated for years. The room erupted. Reporters snapped photos frantically. Shareholders stood in applause mixed with shock. Grandpa stepped to the podium, his voice steady. "I am Howard Wills, and I was never insane. Gerald, my son, cheated to steal the company. He fabricated records, staged it with Griggs, violating shareholder rights. Today, I declare I will sue him for fraud, falsifying medical documents, and all related crimes." Dad backed away, his face ashen. "Dad, how did you get here?" Grandpa looked him straight in the eye. "You didn't expect this, did you? I've waited over 20 years for this day, and today I'll reclaim what's mine and bring justice for Joe." The room descended into chaos, shareholders demanding explanations, media filming, and I stood there, tears rolling down. This was the climax, the justice I'd awaited. But seeing Dad, the man who was once my father, crumble, I felt a mixed sorrow. The meeting ended in turmoil, but we had won this battle. We left the Wills Group headquarters amid shouts and flashing camera lights. Grandpa walked beside me, his hand gripping my shoulder tightly as if to steady himself. But in truth, it was I who needed that support. Elena, our lawyer, followed behind, clutching a thick stack of documents, her face beaming with victory. Noah waited at the back door, his face pale but his eyes shining with hope. "Joe, we did it," he whispered as he hugged me. Leah was outside, updating the reporters. Her article had now become the spark that ignited everything. On the drive home, Grandpa sat silently, gazing out the window as the Wasatch Mountains passed by in the fading twilight. "Joe," he said softly, "do you hate Gerald?" I shook my head, my voice faltering. "I don't know anymore, Grandpa. He's my father, but what he did..." Grandpa nodded, his eyes clouding with memories. "I once loved him too. But power changes people. Now the law will decide." And indeed, the law moved faster than we imagined. Just hours after the meeting, the Utah State Prosecutor's Office announced the reopening of the investigation into Grandpa's incapacity case from years ago. Leah's article, combined with the evidence we presented, had created a wave of public opinion that couldn't be ignored. Journalists dug deeper, interviewing former Wills Group employees, and even some shareholders publicly demanded transparency. I received a call from an investigator. He introduced himself as from the Department of Justice, his voice stern. "Mr. Joe Wills, we need statements from you and Mr. Howard. This is a serious matter involving medical fraud and abuse of power." I agreed immediately, feeling like a weight had been lifted. Grandpa, upon hearing the news, smiled for the first time in years. Finally, the truth is being heard. The investigation lasted a few weeks, but it proceeded at a breakneck pace due to media pressure. They summoned Dr. Griggs first. I imagined him sitting in the interrogation room, his salt and pepper hair disheveled, his fake smile gone. His old records, the ethical violations Leah had uncovered, were revisited. Within a week, the Utah State Medical Board ordered the indefinite suspension of Griggs' license. The The press went wild. Bought psychiatrist Dr. Samuel Griggs loses license after manipulation allegations. He tried to defend himself on TV, his voice trembling. I was just following professional judgment, but no one believed him. Investigators found old emails between him and my father, proving he was paid to sign fake papers for Grandpa. Griggs crumbled under pressure, confessing everything. Gerald Wills forced me. He promised protection if anything went wrong. Next was Dad's old lawyer, Marcus Hale, the gaunt man who had bailed out Griggs. He was charged with aiding fraud and concealing evidence. I followed the news, seeing photos of him being led into court, handcuffs gleaming under the flashes. Elena explained to me, "This is dominoes, Joe. One falls, pulling down the chain." And indeed, that chain of dominoes led straight to Dad. Gerald Wills, my father, was temporarily suspended as CEO of Wills Group just days later. The board of directors, under pressure from shareholders and public opinion, had to act. They issued a statement. To ensure transparency, Mr. Gerald Wills will temporarily step down during the investigation. Dad appeared on television one last time, his voice weaker than ever. "This is a conspiracy against me. I'll prove my innocence." But his eyes betrayed panic. He faced criminal charges, fraud, falsifying medical records, corporate abuse of power. The prosecutor's office listed a litany of offenses, from conspiracy to embezzlement. I got a text from Noah. "Dad's breaking down, Joe. He won't eat or sleep." I replied, "Stay with him. But justice must be served." The days waiting for the trial were the strangest of my life. Grandpa stayed temporarily with Leah and me in our small Salt Lake City apartment. He liked sitting by the window, watching the traffic, telling old stories about the early days of building Wills Group. "I once dreamed of a green empire, Joe," he said, his voice warm. "Not money, but the future." I listened, feeling closer to him than ever. Leah cooked simple meals and we laughed like a real family. But late at night, I lay awake thinking about Dad. He was now alone in his vast mansion, isolated by his own actions. The trial took place on a chilly autumn morning. The courtroom was packed, reporters, shareholders, even my mother flew in from Boston to witness it. Grandpa sat on the plaintiff's side, looking steadfast in his new suit. Dad sat across, his face gaunt, his eyes avoiding contact. The judge, a middle-aged woman with a sharp voice, opened. The case of Howard Wills versus Gerald Wills for fraud and rights infringement. Elena presented the evidence. Fabricated records, Griggs' testimony, old emails. Grandpa took the witness stand, his voice trembling but resolute. "My son betrayed me, betrayed the family. I was never incapacitated, only lost faith in my own blood." Dad tried to defend himself, his lawyer arguing it was all a medical misunderstanding, but the evidence was overwhelming. Griggs, now a witness for the prosecution, confessed fully. "Gerald paid me $500,000 to sign the papers. He wanted the company for himself." The courtroom buzzed. My mother sat behind me, gripping my hand, tears streaming. After 3 days of arguments, the judge banged the gavel. The court finds Gerald Wills guilty of fraud. Howard Wills is restored his honor and full shares in Wills Group. Grandpa stood, hugging me tightly. "Thank you, Joe. We did it." The news spread like wildfire. "Justice for Howard Wills, Gerald convicted, Wills' empire changes." Dad was given a suspended sentence and massive fines, but he lost everything: position, reputation. I visited him once in the now empty mansion. "Dad," I said, my voice choked. "Why?" He looked at me, eyes red. "I was afraid of losing it all, Joe. But I lost my son." I left with a heavy sorrow, but also liberation. With the court's ruling, Grandpa officially returned. We formed an alliance across generations. Wills Group and Verdant Labs partnered with my company at the core. Grandpa served as strategic advisor, bringing his old experience. I led the green, sustainable direction. The first meeting at Verdant Labs headquarters was emotional. Grandpa at the head of the table, smiling. "Now we're building the real future." Noah joined immediately, becoming a key assistant. He handled the green development side with a passion for environmental protection he'd long hidden. "Joe, you and Grandpa are my inspiration," Noah said as we discussed the first project, a massive renewable energy system for Nevada. Noah designed environmental protection programs, from reforestation to emission reductions, turning the Wills empire into a green icon. Stocks for both companies skyrocketed. Investors across America rushed to buy in upon seeing the partnership. Wills Group and Verdant Labs joined forces the Green Revolution, finance papers reported. Verdant Labs shares rose 30% in the first week, Wills Group following with 25%. Major investment funds called, offering collaborations. This two-generation alliance is gold. I stood on the office balcony watching the stock charts soar, feeling like Grandpa's dream was coming true. Looking back on everything, sitting alone in the office late at night, I hadn't just saved the company, I'd broken the cycle of generational manipulation in the family. From Grandpa's betrayal to Dad's schemes to me nearly becoming the next victim. It all ended now. I'd saved the soul of the Wills family, turning it into something better. Leah walked in, hugging me from behind. "You okay?" I nodded, smiling. "Better than ever." We celebrated with an intimate dinner at my home. Just me, Leah, Grandpa, and Noah. We sat around the old wooden table with grilled steak and green salad that Leah made herself. Grandpa raised his glass. "To a bright future." We laughed and talked, reflecting on the journey, from the day Grandpa was taken away to the fateful meeting, to today's justice. Noah shared funny stories about the new project. Leah teased me about being the hero CEO. We were happy thinking of the future, a green empire, a real family. The warm light shone on everyone's faces, and I knew everything was restarting with the truth. In the months that followed, our alliance grew strong. We won the Nevada contract, turning it into the first model green city. Noah led environmental campaigns, planting thousands of trees in Utah. Grandpa, with his experience, guided strategy, often telling old stories for inspiration. "Joe, you saved me," he said once. I shook my head. "No, Grandpa. We saved each other." My father, after his suspended sentence, lived quietly. I wrote inviting him to visit the new headquarters, but I haven't heard back yet. Perhaps one day the wounds will heal. As for me, with Leah by my side, I look forward, where the shadows of the past are gone, only hope and the light of a new beginning remain. And that's the story I want to tell you about the upheavals in my powerful family. It doesn't end perfectly. There are still silences, unclosed doors, and people not ready to forgive. But for me, the most important thing is that we've stepped out of the darkness, reclaimed the truth, and rebuilt the family in the way we choose. The rest, time will tell. And I believe it will be brighter than ever.